The galaxy had known peace for centuries, a delicate balance maintained by an unspoken understanding between the myriad species that inhabited the stars. The alien empires, with their advanced technology and centuries-old traditions, had little reason to fear the humans of Earth. At the time, humanity was just a fledgling power, confined to their own corner of the Milky Way. Earth was still in the early stages of interstellar exploration, barely scratching the surface of the cosmos. But that was about to change, and the galaxy would never be the same. It began as a whisper, an unnoticed signal from deep space, sent from an unknown source at the very edges of explored space. The message was simple but cryptic, and it contained data far beyond the understanding of Earth's leading scientists. At first, humanity dismissed it as a simple anomaly or the work of an untraceable alien race, but there was something about the transmission that caught the attention of one man, Dr. Caleb Ward, an expert in astrophysics and linguistics. Dr. Ward, a quiet but brilliant mind, was the first to recognize the underlying patterns within the message. It was encoded in a way that suggested a level of intelligence far beyond what humans had encountered. But it wasn't just the complexity that intrigued him, there was a strange familiarity to the structure, something human in its rhythm. As he delved deeper into the analysis, Ward uncovered something terrifying. The message contained blueprints, detailed schematics for a new form of energy, a power source that could revolutionize technology. Excited and fearful in equal measure, Dr. Ward brought his findings to the attention of the United Earth government. The higher-ups were cautious but intrigued, quickly assembling a team of scientists, engineers, and military leaders to investigate further. What followed was a scramble for resources, as Earth's top minds worked around the clock to decode the full meaning of the transmission. It took months to fully comprehend the message, but by the time they had, the blueprint was complete. A revolutionary fusion engine, powered by a newly discovered quantum field, was born, an engine that could harness the energy of entire star systems. Humanity had stumbled upon something extraordinary. With the new technology, Earth could suddenly compete with the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. This fusion engine, capable of powering fleets of ships and massive terraforming devices, would allow Earth to stretch its influence beyond its solar system for the first time. But this newfound power came at a cost. No longer could humanity remain the quiet, humble species in the corner of the galaxy. Their arrival in the galactic stage would be noticed, and not all the empires of the stars would greet them with open arms. Before humanity could even begin to contemplate how to use this technology, they were forced to confront an even more immediate threat. An ancient alien empire, the Varric, known for their ruthlessness and hunger for expansion, had intercepted the transmission. The Varric, whose civilization spanned millennia, were uninterested in cooperation. They saw the potential of humanity's discovery, and they made a simple calculation: they would take it. The Varric launched a brutal strike on Earth's first off-world colony, a small mining outpost on a distant moon, seeking to seize control of the new technology. The attack was swift and devastating. Varric warships, massive and heavily armed, descended on the colony, overwhelming the human defenses with ease. But the Varric had underestimated humanity's spirit, and their ingenuity. Earth's forces, while small and still new to the galactic stage, fought back with a ferocity that shocked the Varric. Dr. Ward's fusion-powered ships, barely operational but newly constructed, proved to be far more powerful than anticipated. The Varric underestimated the humans' ability to adapt and fight back with limited resources, and within days, the balance of power on that distant moon began to shift. The battle for the colony raged on for weeks. Humanity, driven by the desperation of defending their own, began to develop tactics and strategies that the Varric had not accounted for. The Varric, accustomed to easily crushing their enemies, found themselves in a struggle unlike any they had faced before. Humanity's ability to think outside the box, to improvise, to learn at an astonishing rate, caught the Varric off guard. As the battle continued, a critical moment arrived. Dr. Ward, leading a small team of engineers, had devised a countermeasure to the Varric's advanced shielding. With nothing more than scraps of old technology, they managed to craft a makeshift weapon capable of piercing the Varric's defenses. It was a last-ditch effort, but it worked. The Varric warships were crippled, and the tide of the battle turned in humanity's favor. In the end, the Varric were forced to retreat, their plans foiled by an enemy they had long underestimated. The humans of Earth had proven that, no matter the odds, they would not go quietly into the dark. This was only the beginning of humanity's journey into the galaxy, but one thing was clear: Earth had just awakened to a new and dangerous reality. The galaxy would now know that humanity, once a fledgling species, was a force to be reckoned with. The story of humanity's ultimate triumph had begun. The victory on the colony moon sent shockwaves through the galaxy, reverberating across borders, governments, and the power structures of the known universe. For the first time in recorded history, a species previously dismissed as insignificant had not only survived an attack from one of the galaxy's most feared empires but had actually triumphed. The Varric, the ancient warlords who had conquered countless worlds, were forced to lick their wounds and retreat, but the threat they posed was far from over. The Galactic Council, a body of the most influential civilizations, convened in an emergency session. The attack on the human colony and the subsequent defeat of the Varric had ignited fear and curiosity in equal measure. Many of the council members had heard the rumors of Earth's newfound power, but none truly believed humanity could become a force of any consequence. Now, the council had to confront the terrifying possibility that Earth, with its new quantum energy technology and relentless drive, could pose a threat to the established order. The council members, from the towering, graceful Zyrixians to the calculating Corathians, argued furiously over what action to take. Some proposed diplomacy, offering Earth a seat at the table to ensure their cooperation and prevent any further hostilities. Others, more pragmatic and far less trusting, called for immediate action to crush humanity before they could grow too powerful. In the end, the decision was made: the Varric would be called upon to deal with Earth once and for all, with full support from the Galactic Council. On Earth, however, things were far from simple. The victory at the colony had been a desperate one, and humanity's leaders knew that they could not afford to rest on their laurels. Dr. Caleb Ward, now a hero and a central figure in Earth's newly formed Galactic Defense Coalition, understood that their victory was only temporary. The Varric might have been repelled, but they would return, and this time, humanity would not have the luxury of surprise. Ward, along with the brightest minds from Earth's military, science, and engineering communities, began an ambitious project to build a fleet powerful enough to stand against the Varric and any other force that might rise against them. The fusion engine technology, a gift from the mysterious alien transmission, was at the heart of their efforts. They would not only build warships but entire battle stations capable of repelling the might of any invading force. The work was grueling and required years of labor. Massive orbital shipyards were constructed above Earth and its colonies, and entire fleets of ships, powered by the new quantum energy, began to take shape. Dr. Ward and his team crafted cutting-edge weapons, utilizing the power of artificial intelligence to design strategies and countermeasures against every known alien species. The military might of humanity was being forged in secret, hidden behind the walls of vast space stations and classified research facilities. But as the preparations continued, an unexpected event shook humanity to its core. A transmission was intercepted, an encrypted message from an unknown source, warning of a cataclysmic event. The message, decoded by Dr. Ward's team, was chilling in its implications. A new and far greater threat than the Varric was on the horizon, a race of hyper-advanced, ancient beings known only as the Star. The Star were older than any of the known galactic species, and their reach extended far beyond the borders of the galaxy. They had once ruled the cosmos with an iron fist, bringing entire star systems to heel. It was said that they had the power to manipulate time itself, creating temporal rifts that could obliterate civilizations in the blink of an eye. Their knowledge of quantum fields was unmatched, and it was believed that they had left no trace of their existence when they vanished millennia ago. The transmission was a warning: the Star were returning, and they would not tolerate the presence of any species, least of all humanity, standing in their way. The Council, aware of the growing tensions and now faced with the rising specter of the Star, decided to act. A united front was needed. The Varric, still licking their wounds, would be brought into the fold as allies in the fight against the Star. But it was clear that Earth, with its rapid advancements, would play a central role in the coming conflict. Meanwhile, the human military was preparing for a war unlike any they had faced before. Humanity had only just begun to scratch the surface of their technological advancements, and now they would have to fight not just for survival, but for the very future of the galaxy. As the shipyards hummed with activity and the first fleets began to take shape, the galaxy watched in uneasy silence. The stage was set. The Galactic Council had no choice but to rely on Earth's newly acquired power, while humanity found itself at the center of a storm that threatened to consume everything. As Dr. Ward gazed out over the horizon of Earth, now a bustling hub of interstellar activity, he knew the truth: the galaxy had underestimated humanity. The Varric's retreat had been only the first chapter. Now, humanity would be tested in ways no one could predict. And when the star arrived, they would find Earth and its people ready, not just to survive, but to conquer. The star were not like any enemy humanity had encountered before. Their existence had been reduced to myth, their name whispered in the annals of ancient texts, legends of a race so powerful that they had vanished without a trace, until now. The warning transmission had sent a ripple of fear through the galaxy, but on Earth, it sparked something else: resolve. Dr. Caleb Ward, the man who had unlocked humanity's path to dominance, stood at the helm of Earth's efforts to prepare for this new threat. The Coalition's fleet was vast, but still, there was no certainty they could stand against the star's power. Humanity's newest warships, fueled by the quantum fusion engines, were formidable, but the star were said to possess technology far beyond anything even the Galactic Council had seen. Time was running out. The Galactic Council, still reeling from the revelation of the star's imminent return, had no choice but to consolidate their forces. They extended a formal alliance to Earth, hoping that humanity's boldness and rapid technological progress could provide the edge needed to counter the star. But even within this new united front, tensions simmered. The Varric, still nursing their wounds from their defeat on Earth's colony moon, had reluctantly agreed to join the alliance. But there was no love lost between the Varric and humanity, and both sides were only united by their shared fear of the star. As the council met, a gathering of the galaxy's most influential species, Earth's representatives, led by Dr. Ward, faced the grim reality: the star were already in motion. Disturbances in the fabric of space were reported, rifts opening up in distant star systems, and entire worlds vanishing without a trace. Ancient ruins, long thought abandoned, began to show signs of life again, faint echoes of the star's influence, pulsing with an eerie energy. A fleet of human warships, newly constructed and still in the final stages of their trials, stood ready to join the Council's forces. Each ship was a marvel of human ingenuity, sleek, fast, and powered by the most advanced energy source in the galaxy. With them came a new type of weapon: temporal disruptors, experimental technology developed by Dr. Ward's team to counter the star's rumored control over time. These weapons, though untested in battle, were humanity's best hope for survival. As the ships prepared to embark on their first joint mission, the tension in the command center was palpable. Dr. Ward had led humanity through the first clash with the Varric, but the threat they now faced was something far more terrifying. The star were not just invaders, they were harbingers of destruction. Their ancient empire had once ruled everything, bending the laws of reality itself to their will. And now, they were returning to reclaim what they believed was rightfully theirs. Dr. Ward stood before the War Council, a holographic map of the galaxy displayed in front of him. His mind raced with possibilities, weighing every potential outcome. The temporal disruptors were humanity's greatest weapon, but even they were untested. There was no telling how effective they would be against a race that could manipulate the very fabric of existence. The star were coming, and there was no place to hide. Humanity had no choice but to face them head-on. The first clash came sooner than expected. A small, uninhabited system near the outer rim had reported strange fluctuations in spacetime, and the Council had dispatched a mixed fleet of Varric, human, and Xerixian ships to investigate. What they found was a scene straight out of a nightmare. A massive star flagship, more colossal than anything the Council had ever seen, had appeared out of nowhere, emerging from a rift in space. The ship was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered, a gargantuan structure that seemed to twist and warp around itself, like a living entity. As the fleet moved into position, their sensors went dark, and the ships were plunged into an eerie silence. The Star had already disabled their communications systems, leaving them completely blind. Then the real horror began. The Star flagship unleashed a barrage of energy, not from weapons, but from the very fabric of space itself. Rifts opened up around the fleet, causing entire ships to vanish into nowhere, their crews lost to time and space. As the human and Varric ships attempted to retaliate, the Star's influence over the battlefield became apparent. Ships, once locked in combat, began to move erratically, as if they were stuck in a temporal loop, unable to escape the Star's manipulation of time. Dr. Ward watched in horror as his flagship, the Eclipse, came under attack. The temporal disruptors, their only hope, were deployed, but the effects were minimal. The Star's power was overwhelming. It wasn't just that their technology was advanced, it was as though they existed beyond time, manipulating it with an ease that left the human forces helpless. In the chaos, humanity's fleet was shattered, a fraction of its original strength. In the aftermath of the skirmish, the surviving ships limped back to Earth, battered and broken. The Galactic Council was in disarray, their unity fractured under the pressure of the Star's power. The Varric, once confident in their dominance, were now shaken. The Zyrixians, who had always prided themselves on their wisdom, were silent. And humanity, whose courage had previously been their greatest asset, was left grappling with the enormity of the challenge before them. But Dr. Ward, though shaken, was not one to give up easily. The Star had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt. The temporal disruptors, though ineffective in their first battle, were still evolving. The technology was new, raw, and far from perfected, but Ward knew that humanity's ingenuity, its ability to innovate and learn at an exponential rate, was their greatest strength. The war was far from over. As humanity licked its wounds and prepared for the inevitable next clash, Dr. Ward knew that the Star would not be the last challenge they faced. The galaxy had underestimated humanity before, and it would do so again. But now, humanity had a reputation to uphold, and the fire of resistance burned brighter than ever. The ultimate triumph was within reach, but the path ahead would be anything but easy. The battle with the Star had shaken the foundations of humanity's confidence, but it had also forged a new determination. Dr. Caleb Ward and the leaders of Earth's Galactic Defense Coalition knew that their previous attempt to confront the Star had failed, miserably. The Star had proven that their manipulation of time and space was an insurmountable obstacle. But that didn't mean humanity was ready to surrender. The fire of resistance still burned, and now, there was a new focus: survival, and then, triumph. In the months following the disastrous skirmish, Earth's forces had regrouped. The surviving warships were repaired, but the damage to morale was harder to fix. The losses were catastrophic, and even the more seasoned military officers, who had fought in the battle against the Varric, found themselves questioning whether humanity could ever stand against a force so beyond their understanding. But Dr. Ward wasn't one to give in to despair. He understood that their failure hadn't been the end, but the beginning of something far greater. Humanity's greatest strength had always been its adaptability, its ability to learn, evolve, and innovate. If the Star could manipulate time, humanity would learn to counter that manipulation. If their technology bent the laws of space, humanity would build something stronger. It was a daunting challenge, but Dr. Ward knew it was one they could overcome. The human fleet, though decimated, had learned much from their encounter with the Star. The temporal disruptors, initially deemed ineffective, had proven capable of momentarily halting the Star's manipulation of time, but only for a fraction of a second. That fraction was enough to give the humans hope. If they could refine the disruptors, if they could expand their capabilities, perhaps they could neutralize the Star's advantage. The Coalition's scientists and engineers, now under the guidance of Dr. Ward, began to work around the clock. The fusion technology that had propelled humanity's rise to power was now combined with experimental time manipulation theories, driven by the very principles the Star had used against them. Earth's top minds, drawing inspiration from both human ingenuity and the remnants of Star technology, began constructing new weapons, new strategies, anything that could tip the scales back in their favor. At the same time, Earth's alliances with the Varric and the other galactic species were fraying. Though they had been united by the common goal of defeating the Star, distrust ran deep. The Varric, once so proud, now found themselves humiliated by their losses at the hands of a species they had considered beneath them. The Zyrixians, though still valuable allies, began to question humanity's ability to hold their own. The Galactic Council meetings were tense affairs, filled with back-and-forth arguments, political posturing, and an underlying fear that humanity might not be up to the task ahead. As the days wore on, the human fleet grew stronger, fueled by a singular purpose. Dr. Ward's efforts to harness the raw potential of the temporal disruptors were beginning to show promise. The disruptors were now capable of creating localized temporal rifts, small-scale pockets of time distortion that could slow down or speed up entire fleets. It wasn't the full control over time that the Star had, but it was a start. And in the vast expanse of space, where battles could span weeks, even a few seconds could be the difference between victory and defeat. As the new weapons and technologies began to take shape, word came from the Outer Rim, where the Star had continued their campaign of destruction. A small human outpost on the edge of a remote star system had reported sightings of star ships, confirming that the ancient race was not just content to sit back and watch humanity recover. The Star were coming for Earth. This was the moment humanity had been waiting for. The time to test their new weapons, their new strategies, had arrived. But this time, there would be no retreat. There would be no half measures. Dr. Ward stood before the assembled military leaders, the commanders of Earth's fleet. The room was silent, every eye on him. This time, humanity would not be caught unprepared. This time, they would not let the Star manipulate them, humiliate them, or erase their future. This was the moment to reclaim their place in the galaxy. "We will not surrender," Dr. Ward said, his voice calm but filled with an unwavering resolve. "The Star may be powerful, but they are not invincible. We will learn from our failures, adapt, and fight back. We will show them that humanity is a force they cannot ignore." The fleet was ready. The new weapons were loaded, and the tactical systems had been recalibrated. With the temporal disruptors now fully integrated into their warships, the human fleet was poised for their next battle with the Star. The war would be hard fought, but humanity was not backing down. They were a species on the brink of achieving their ultimate triumph, and no force in the galaxy, no matter how ancient or powerful, would stop them from claiming their destiny. The first wave of ships launched from Earth's orbit, their sleek forms cutting through the stars. They were not just warships now, they were symbols of humanity's resilience, of a species that had never stopped fighting, never stopped evolving. As the ships hurtled toward the unknown, Dr. Ward watched from his command post, his mind focused on the upcoming battle. The galaxy would soon learn that humanity's resolve was stronger than any force the Star could bring. This time, humanity would fight not just to survive, but to win. And with every passing moment, the galaxy grew a little bit closer to witnessing the ultimate triumph of humanity. The battle was fast approaching, and the air on Earth was thick with tension. Humanity had made incredible strides in its technological advancements, but they knew they were still facing an unknown enemy, the Star, a race so advanced that even their most brilliant minds couldn't fully comprehend the scale of their power. But humanity had something the Star had long forgotten: the will to survive, to adapt, and to outlast any challenge. Dr. Caleb Ward paced through the war room of Earth's command center, a massive structure built deep beneath the planet's surface. The walls were lined with holographic displays showing the movements of the Star fleet, which had advanced rapidly toward Earth. Every minute that passed brought them closer to an inevitable showdown. Humanity's fleet had gathered in Earth's orbit, a formidable force of warships bristling with weapons and new technology designed specifically to counter the Star's abilities. Despite the growing fear, there was also an unmistakable sense of hope. Humanity had survived the Varric, thrived in the face of overwhelming odds, and now they stood on the precipice of something even greater. The galactic powers had underestimated Earth before, and they had learned that humanity would never bow to fear. Now, Earth's soldiers were ready to face the ultimate challenge. At the heart of the fleet, the Eclipse, Dr. Ward's flagship, had been outfitted with the latest advancements. The temporal disruptors were now fully functional, able to create localized time distortions that would give Earth's ships a chance to outmaneuver the stars' overwhelming manipulation of time. It was their only hope. But even with this weapon in their arsenal, the odds were long. The Varric, who had reluctantly joined forces with Earth, were preparing for their own participation in the battle. Their alliance with humanity was still fraught with tension. The Varric had never been ones to collaborate willingly, especially with a species they had once deemed inferior. But with the star coming, there was no other choice. They would fight side by side with humanity, though no one knew whether the Varric could be trusted in the heat of battle. As Dr. Ward stood before his crew, preparing for the final battle, he couldn't help but reflect on how far humanity had come. The journey had been long, filled with setbacks, losses, and doubts. But now, they were united with purpose, and that unity, he believed, was their greatest weapon. "We fight for the future," Ward said to his crew. "We fight for Earth, for our colonies, for every world that could fall under the star's rule. This isn't just about survival anymore. It's about showing the galaxy that humanity will not be silenced. We will not bow to the power of any empire, no matter how ancient or powerful." With that, the fleet, now fully assembled and ready, left Earth's orbit and jumped into hyperspace. Their destination, the location of the star's advancing fleet. The next few hours would decide the fate of the galaxy. The battle begins. The human fleet arrived at the edge of the star system where the star had been amassing their forces. The star's flagship, the colossal, shifting warship that seemed to defy the very laws of physics, was already in sight. It was surrounded by dozens of smaller, sleek ships, craft that glowed with an unnatural, ominous energy. The star had prepared for this battle as well, and their presence sent a chill down the spines of those in humanity's fleet. The human ships scattered into their battle formations, their engines glowing with power. The temporal disruptors were primed and ready, each ship carrying enough firepower to rival anything in the galaxy. It wasn't just the technology that made them formidable, it was the spirit of their crews. Each ship carried a message: humanity was no longer the underdog. The first volley was fired by the star, a barrage of energy beams that seemed to warp reality itself as they traveled through space. They struck a Varric ship, causing it to explode in a flash of light, its remains lost to the twisting rifts the star had created in space. The human ships fired back, their weapons targeting the star's smaller vessels. But as they fired, the star's influence began to manifest once more. The battlefield around them warped, time itself bending in strange and unpredictable ways. Ships began to flicker in and out of existence, as if trapped in moments of time they couldn't escape. Some ships vanished into temporal loops, only to reappear moments later, disoriented and vulnerable. The human fleet was under attack from more than just weapons, they were fighting a war against time itself. "Activate the temporal disruptors," Ward barked through the comms. The human ships powered up their devices, and in an instant, the tide of the battle shifted. The disruptors created shockwaves in time, short-circuiting the star's ability to manipulate the battlefield. For the first time, the human fleet had a chance to move freely without the star's time-warping influence. But the star were not defeated so easily. Their flagship unleashed a massive energy pulse, one that could obliterate an entire fleet. The human ships scattered to avoid the blast, but one Varric vessel, unable to evade in time, was torn apart. The Varric crew, who had once treated humanity with disdain, now stood shoulder to shoulder with them in this final, desperate fight. There was no room for pride anymore, there was only survival. As the battle raged on, Dr. Ward's thoughts were clear: if they could survive this initial clash, if they could push through the star's defenses, then perhaps there was hope. The fight wasn't just about advanced technology, it was about the resolve of those willing to fight for their future. Humanity had no intention of surrendering. Not now, not ever. And then, just as the star's flagship prepared to unleash another devastating blast, the unthinkable happened. The temporal disruptors began to synchronize across the entire human fleet, their power amplifying each other, creating a massive, focused wave of time-altering energy. The star flagship flickered, its massive form momentarily destabilizing as the temporal field cracked. In that moment of weakness, the human ships launched everything they had left: bombs, energy blasts, and missiles, all targeting the heart of the star warship. The flagship exploded in a cataclysmic burst, its energy rippling across space as the star fleet began to collapse in disarray. The star, unable to maintain their manipulation of time, were now vulnerable. Humanity had struck the first blow in the war to come, but it was a victory they would have to fight to keep. The victory was short-lived, but it was powerful. As the star flagship crumbled into the void, an overwhelming sense of triumph washed over humanity's fleet. For the first time, they had shown the galaxy that they could stand toe-to-toe with the most ancient and powerful force the universe had ever known. The temporal disruptors had worked, and the star had been momentarily outmatched. But even in the wake of their success, Dr. Caleb Ward could feel the weight of the battle's consequences. The star's defeat was only a single step in a much larger war, one that would reshape the galaxy. They had inflicted a heavy blow on the star, but the enemy was far from broken. What's more, the ripple effect of this confrontation would not only have lasting consequences for humanity, but for all of galactic civilization. As the dust settled, the human fleet regrouped. The battlefield, once a chaotic maelstrom of warships and time-bending anomalies, now lay eerily still. The remains of the star fleet scattered across space, but the threat wasn't over. The temporal distortions caused by the star's flagship had left lingering effects across the system, strange pockets of distorted time, warping and flickering, shifting between past and future. This phenomenon wasn't just a hazard, it was a sign of the star's lingering presence, a remnant of their vast, incomprehensible power. The human fleet, though victorious, was battered. Their ships, though sturdy, were showing signs of wear. The temporal disruptors had performed admirably, but they were not infallible. Even with their technological advantage, humanity had come dangerously close to losing the fight. Dr. Ward knew they had only been lucky this time, lucky that the star had underestimated humanity's resilience. But luck was a fleeting thing. "We've dealt them a significant blow," Ward said, standing before a holographic display of the battlefield. His voice carried the weight of responsibility. "But this is only the beginning. The star will be back. They'll learn from their mistakes, adapt, and they won't underestimate us again." His words echoed in the command center, where the leaders of Earth's military forces gathered. They had won, yes, but at what cost? The war was far from over, and the star's forces, though scattered, were still formidable. Humanity's fleet was intact, but with significant losses. The Varric, who had fought alongside humanity, now looked to the human leaders with renewed respect, but that respect came with a price. The Varric had always been proud, fiercely independent, and their alliance with humanity had always been tenuous. After this battle, some of them would be eager to pull back, to consider their own interests rather than those of the larger galactic coalition. But Dr. Ward had bigger concerns. The true threat was not just the star's immediate retaliation, it was the potential chaos their presence could ignite throughout the galaxy. The star's return would not go unnoticed. The galaxy had already seen what they were capable of, and now, every race, every faction, would react. Some would rally to humanity's cause, drawn by the victory. Others, frightened by the star's power, might seek to align with them. The balance of power across the stars was in flux, and Earth would need to navigate the delicate web of alliances, betrayals, and ambitions that would emerge in the wake of this battle. "We need to strike first," Ward continued, his gaze unwavering. "The star's reinforcements will come, and when they do, we'll be ready. But we can't afford to wait for them to regroup. If we allow them the time they need, we'll be back to square one." The Council of Galactic Defense agreed. It was time to take the fight to the star, to strike at their strongholds and cut off their ability to rebuild. The immediate concern was the remnants of the star fleet, which, though decimated, still had the potential to regroup and retaliate. But the greater risk came from the star's unrelenting drive to conquer, and to wipe out any race that posed a threat to their return to dominance. Humanity, once a fledgling force, was now an undeniable challenge. In the aftermath of the battle, Earth's forces prepared for their next offensive. But there was a deeper concern, one that had begun to gnaw at the edges of Ward's thoughts. The temporal distortions left behind by the star had created anomalies across space, distortions that were not just random accidents. They were a clue. Humanity had beaten the star once, but what if the star had a greater plan? What if their time-bending technology was only the surface of something far more dangerous? Ward had never been one to believe in fate or destiny. But he had come to realize that humanity's victory might have unleashed a chain of events they could not fully understand. The temporal anomalies were not just accidents, they were symptoms of something deeper, a disturbance in the very fabric of reality itself. If the star had mastered time in such a way, what else could they manipulate? As Earth's fleet made preparations for their next offensive, Ward began to see a larger pattern emerging. The star were not simply conquerors, they were architects of something far more terrifying, a war for control of time itself. The galaxy was on the brink of a battle not just for survival, but for control of the very flow of time. Humanity had struck the first blow, but the true war, the war for time, had only just begun. Dr. Ward knew that they had to act quickly, before the star could use their mastery over time to undo everything humanity had fought for. The next phase of the war would not just test humanity's resolve, it would test their understanding of the very fabric of existence. And in that battle, humanity would either prove itself worthy of its newfound place in the galaxy, or be swept away by forces beyond their comprehension. As the human fleet set its course for the star's next stronghold, Ward couldn't shake the feeling that the ultimate test was still ahead. And it was one that would change everything. The moment had arrived. The human fleet, now strengthened by their victory and bolstered with new tactics, weapons, and a deep resolve, set course for the heart of the star's operations. Dr. Caleb Ward stood at the helm of the Eclipse, his eyes locked on the screen that displayed the star's fortress, a vast and terrifying structure that orbited a star on the far edge of known space. This was their final stronghold, and it would be here that the ultimate confrontation would take place. The star had become more than just a galactic threat. Over the course of the conflict, humanity had learned to anticipate their strategies, to understand their movements. The star had underestimated Earth's ability to adapt and counter their methods. But this final battle would be different. For once, humanity would not be fighting just for survival, they would be fighting to control the very fabric of reality itself. The temporal distortions that had warped the battlefield in the previous engagements were growing more pronounced, more dangerous. Time itself seemed to warp around the star's fortress, pockets of chaotic energy twisting the galaxy around it. Humanity's fleet had already encountered anomalies in the space surrounding the fortress, time loops, temporal shifts, areas where future and past coexisted in fragmented ways. If the human fleet was to succeed, they would need to shut down the star's ability to manipulate time completely. This would be their most daring and dangerous mission yet. Dr. Ward's mind raced as he prepared for the final push. They had learned so much, but so much was still unknown. The temporal disruptors they had developed had worked, but they hadn't yet faced the full power of the star's time manipulation at its epicenter. This battle would not just be fought with weapons and strategy, it would be fought with time itself. "Admiral, the fleet is ready," said Lieutenant Grace Simmons, who had served alongside Ward through every major engagement. "We're in position. The Varric have confirmed their support. The Zyrixians are standing by as well. It's all or nothing." Ward nodded grimly. "Let's make sure it's something." With that, the human fleet moved forward in tight formation, the vast array of ships glinting against the backdrop of the dark expanse. Every captain, every soldier knew the stakes. This wasn't just another battle, it was the culmination of everything humanity had worked for. The star would either break, or humanity would. The first salvo came from the star's fortress. Massive energy pulses, each one bending time itself, struck the fleet in waves. Some ships flickered in and out of existence. Others experienced strange, horrifying visions of their past and future colliding. But humanity's fleet held steady, each captain having trained to navigate these time distortions. They had learned to fight through the chaos, and now, they were ready to counter the star. Ward ordered the full activation of the temporal disruptors. The fleet's ships hummed with energy as the disruptors emitted a powerful pulse, sending ripples through the fabric of spacetime. For a moment, it seemed as if nothing would happen, but then, the star fortress itself began to flicker. The vast structure that had once been an indomitable force seemed to waver, its own temporal field struggling to maintain cohesion against the human disruptors. "Now!" Ward shouted. With synchronized precision, the human fleet unleashed everything they had. Energy beams, missiles, and advanced temporal bombs targeted the core of the star fortress. The human ships fired relentlessly, each shot hitting its mark. The fortress's defenses, weakened by the disruption of the temporal field, began to crumble. But the star were not finished yet. Their retaliation came in the form of a massive pulse of temporal energy that threatened to reverse the flow of time itself. The entire human fleet flickered, and for a moment, Ward feared the worst. But then, as if a switch had been flipped, humanity's fleet surged forward, unaffected by the star's desperate assault. The disruptors, now fully synchronized, were neutralizing the star's time-bending weaponry. The star fortress, once a symbol of their invincibility, began to implode in slow motion, caught in the very time distortion it had wielded against others. The star leader, an ancient being who had existed for millennia, raged against humanity's unexpected resilience. The star had never imagined that a species so young and so untested could rise up against them, let alone defeat their mastery of time. But humanity had done it. They had used the very force the star had relied on for eons to dismantle their empire. As the fortress crumbled, the star fleet, which had been surrounding it, faltered. They had no leader, no plan, and no way to reverse the damage humanity had done. The temporal distortions that had once been their greatest weapon now worked against them, tearing apart their ships, trapping them in loops of time that rendered them powerless. Humanity's fleet pressed on, finishing what they had started. The final remnants of the star's forces were either destroyed or disabled, leaving only silence in their wake. The stars around the battlefield flickered with the residual energy of the battle, but the galaxy had been forever changed. Dr. Ward stood before the viewscreen of the eclipse, watching the dissolution of the star's empire. His heart was heavy, but his spirit was resolute. They had won, not just for Earth, but for the entire galaxy. Humanity had proven that, despite being newcomers to the galactic stage, they were not to be underestimated. They had shown that they could overcome even the most insurmountable odds, that their will to survive, adapt, and innovate could overcome the greatest threats the universe had ever known. The war was over. Humanity had triumphed, and their place in the galaxy was no longer in question. The star were no more. Dr. Ward looked out at the stars, knowing that the victory came at a cost, but it was a price they were willing to pay. The galaxy was free, and humanity's future, once uncertain, now stretched before them like a vast, uncharted horizon. Humanity had claimed its place as the galaxy's most powerful force, not through brute strength, but through the power of resolve, unity, and an unshakable will to fight for what was rightfully theirs. The ultimate triumph had been achieved.